What is happening, Post Shifters? Welcome back to another episode of the Post Shift Podcast. I'm surprised I actually didn't already pull out of doing this already. I don't know. I'm still skeptical of my own personal drive to continue to keep doing the podcast. But I actually had a really good episode last week with Shawn. If you want to go check that out, talking about just everything. And so I think that's the best way to put it is I got a little bit of my personal gratitude out of that. Today I've got Kevin Demers from Montreal. I always mispronounce his last name wrong. It's either Demers or Demers or which way I want to call it that day. He's one of my best friends, and I'm really looking forward to this episode. We're just talking in the green room about, if you've noticed on the live stream, it's called Kevin Demers Building an Empire. And so I really want to get down to him. I look up to him quite a bit. We talk once or twice a week just about everything. So I'm going to bring him in. Clickety click that. Clickety click me down there. There he is. Hey, buddy. How are you?
Hey, fella. Not bad. You?
Very, very good. Happy birthday for yesterday. I have to say it openly in the thing. If you haven't been big 40, you feel good at 40?
Feel great. Still don't have too many grays like you.
You're a very handsome
man. Super lucky, but I got all the grays hiding in the corners, so they're starting to peek out a little bit. But you know what?
Those things I've had people go, "Why'd you dye it?" I'm like, if I showed up with a brown beard the next day, no. They would just look so sketch.
Gray is for wisdom, man. It looks great. No, I'm actually excited for it.
You've been on the episode on the podcast before. I'm redoing a lot of guests this time around so that I can sort of rehash a lot of things and structure it a little bit better to give the listener a lot more value. The one thing I really want to chat to you about today was multi-unit management, because I think there's not a lot of independent solo entrepreneurs that are multi-unit and how they sort of do that. Like when you start getting into multi-unit, once you get past like that 2 or 3 venues, you've got a team, sort of like a head office team, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And so, how about you give everybody your origin story, like how you started out, and when did you open Coldroom?
2016.
Because we've known each other for about that long.
You and I met, I believe, 2016. Yeah. 2016 to early 2017, I think it was.
Yeah. So tell everybody your origin story, how you got into the industry, and what made you open up Coldroom, your very first venue.
Stupidity to start. No, it's funny. I haven't talked about that in a while, and I kind of shied away from open forum talks and stuff like that in the last 2-3 years. Probably a little bit longer than that. Just I didn't feel I had much to say or offer, I guess is the right words, in the last little bit to community, to others. And I also wanted to kind of focus on my team a lot more, and the people that work for and with myself and the rest of my team as well. But I started bartending at 18 and always used bartending. It's funny, I've been reflecting on this the last little bit, turning 40. Not a midlife crisis or anything, but more every sort of 10 years, I always kind of reflect. And at 18, I started bartending. The reason I started bartending, full on honesty, was because I couldn't speak to women. And I also was extremely shy. And I got bullied a lot in school and etc. And that kind of led to me being a big time introvert. Still am now, especially not bartending anymore. It's a lot tougher for me to talk to people. But 18, I figured out that I really enjoyed bartending, and it kind of got me out of my shell in a good and a bad way. Then I always used bartending in my early 20s as a tool. It's kind of a side job, if you want, in order to develop myself personally and find and start building certain tools that I needed in my utility belt. And that's what I kind of realized what my 20s were. And then by my 30s, I opened my first business, my first brick and mortar business. I opened businesses along the way in my 20s, not knowing what I was doing, online stores, production company, things like that. But again, not knowing what I was doing and just trying to figure it out myself with the hard head that I have. And when I was 30, I was working on this space, or at least trying to get this space, because my mentality was find a space that's low rent, that already has a bar permit, and low risk, high reward, hopefully, was kind of sort of my whole thing. And I had an idea of what I wanted, and I was looking for about 2 years, and found this, what I call beautiful space, but in reality, it was beautiful space for an absolute psycho. Because the space itself, when you walked in, was, you really needed an imagination to see past everything that was wrong with it. And like, even just a small description wouldn't be enough to describe the horror that was this space, which is now Coldroom. And bugged my landlord at the time for about 8-9 months to get the space. And to be honest with you, he was one of my first mentors who really humbled me, to sort of understand that I had no idea what I was doing or getting myself into, because he ripped into me like it was nobody's business, going, "What do you know about business? Like, literally, what do you know?" And grilled me. And then finally, with me being as annoying that I was, he gave me the lease, and gave me a very, very good lease. And my journey started, and it took me about 12 months to open Coldroom. So I finally got Coldroom open when I was 31. But argument's sake, I've been in business for the last 10 years. And yeah, here we are. After Coldroom, I opened my second location as well, which was El Pequeño, about 1.5 years later. And then after that, a few more. And
so you've got Coldroom now was 2016.
Yep.
Pequeño was like late 2017, 2018.
Yeah, exactly.
When did you do Bizu?
Bizu and Bello were both last year. Last year, April was Bizu, and last year, August, first week of August was Bello.
Were you planning on doing those two new venues before the pandemic hit? Like, would they, like, obviously the pandemic sort of put a kibosh on a lot of things.
Yeah.
What was the driver behind doing two venues in a space of like 6 months?
Well, it wasn't supposed to happen like that. Bello was actually supposed to open before Bizu, but we just had a few hiccups along the way. So Bello was supposed to open almost a year before. So it was supposed to be August the year before, which again, not the end of the world, because I'm accustomed to delays. It's happened throughout the last 10 years that I've been, whether consulting or opening my own places. It's normal. It's something that you kind of have to expect. And if you don't expect it and you don't have sort of the emergency funds for things like that, you're in for a bumpy ride.
So when it comes to building your team, I know we've chatted over the years, we've done work together over the years. How do you build a team now that you've got, like, if anyone goes to Montreal, they're going to know that Coldroom's there, Pequeño's just upstairs, Beezy's across the street. A little bit easier to sort of like manage a team in that sort of like 1 block radius. How do you? But Bello is like out of town.
Yeah,
like, Bello is a good half-hour Uber drive from old Montreal.
Yeah.
How have you built the team, and have you built the team to run each venue?
It's a great question. So a lot of trial and error was is the start. So we've been constantly opening the last basically 10 years, well, 9 years, excuse me. all different kinds of venues, or even doing different events, whether it was like Miracle we did for like 4 or 5 years. So we've always been constantly growing, if you want, and needing to figure out ways to work. Multi-unit style, so it's like more than one space or more than one event. There's always something going on, always having an activity, whatever it may be, every month, always trying to get talked about. And when it came down to it, especially now, we've broken it down that everyone has their own separate roles. But I've always been very specific, and this kind of comes from Coldroom. When I opened it, I didn't want any space above what we have in terms of Coldroom space. So about 2,000 square feet is my maximum that I want in any space, for multiple reasons. One of those reasons is just the economy. I don't think the economy can sustain a space that's 10,000 square feet plus. That's just, again, this is just my opinion. And also my comfort level as well. I'm not comfortable, banking or trying to fill up a space that needs, 200 plus people in one sitting. That like stresses me out. I'd rather something a little bit tighter. So 2,000 square feet usually gives you about 50 to 75 people, depending obviously on your space and the way it's set up and what kind of prep space you need, etc. That way, your team is very tight and concise. Each venue has minimum one manager, depending on how busy the venue is. And it always depends in terms of a financial situation. Once it's making $1 million in revenue and gross, we can afford a second manager, and we'll have a second manager ready to roll. Those managers, how I split them is, and this is actually, again, something that I learned during opening Coldroom. Get a phone call from my manager because I didn't understand what fixed rate or fixed salaries were at the time. And my accountant calls me going, okay, you're giving this as a base salary, but how are you breaking down the hours? And I'm there scratching my head, just going, what do you mean? And they're like, well, you got to break down the hours. Like, how much do they make on an hour? And I was like, oh, shit. Okay. So then I sat back and I looked at that going, okay, how should I break this down? So I broke it down in 2 ways. One is on a low end and on a high end. On a low end, if a manager is running the venue, I call it administration hours and then service hours. Admin hours on a low end should be about 10 hours. On a high end should be about 20 hours a week. And then service hours on a low end, it's 20 hours. On a high end, it's 40 hours. The service hours is all dependent on them being the managers. And what I mean by that is that that's kind of just an added bonus for them because they're making tips. But they also have their fixed salary. So if they are working, argument's sake, 40 hours a week, it's because someone called in sick, which again, it's pretty rare, and we're very fortunate for that. It's also there's also that other element to it of if they want to add, have extra hours, see what's going on, work the quieter days, the list kind of goes on. It's again very rare that happens. And then on the admin side, there's all kinds of things: inventory, scheduling, our weekly meetings, getting ready for events, things like that, receiving orders, categorizing everything, all that jazz. R&D, if there is any, which is always sort of dependent. But that's kind of how I run just the management teams per venue. Then after that, there's the upper managers. So presently we have myself and my partner at Bizu, Rob Weeks, who's my director of operations. So he's basically my right hand and also taking care of all the operation side of things, but also the small details of like the HR stuff. And I think in the last year, both him and I have learned quite a bit on that.
Yeah, HR, especially in this modern day, is very, very different.
Yeah.
with with now you having 4 venues, you've got Coldroom. How would you describe Coldroom? Like classic speakeasy style?
So every space, and this kind of sort of grew into to sort of how we run and operate venues, but every space has a focus on a certain spirit or spirits, plural. And then we build the concept out of that. Originally, Coldroom wasn't that. It was just a natural sort of speakeasy cocktail bar. And it's developed a lot more now into speakeasy cocktail bar that has a heavy focus on whiskey.
Okay.
And we have a very nice curated list. And that's actually, funny enough, something Rob started taking care of when he was just managing Coldroom at the time. It was something that he thought we needed. And again, when it comes to multi-venue spaces, I'm an advocate for collaborating with anyone that you're working with. You have your box that you have to stay in terms of what your concept is. But if someone wants to bring something to the table, they have to present it. And if they present it, they got to run with it. If obviously it's accepted amongst the group. Obviously I make the final decision, but this is a team thing because the space needs to morph with the time as well. So,
well, that being said, how do you, with 4 venues, how do you, and just for everybody listening, so El Pequeño is rum, Cuban, Bizu Bizu is fortified wines and Amaros.
Yeah. Fortified wines with a heavy focus on Amaro and sherry as well, and vermouth. So yeah.
And then Bello is classic Italian, Campari, bitter, Negroni machine.
Vermouths and Amaros, but we're kind of pushing away a little bit towards the vermouth and just sticking with the Amaros.
So when you're doing that, how do you maintain consistency on a personal level? Obviously, you and I both don't bartend as much as we used to, or at all, or completely not at all. How do you control consistency between the venues? Because a lot of people, when they just start doing multi-unit, 9 times out of 10, the multi-unit sort of facets are the same concept, just plug and play, cookie cutter sort of thing.
Which is my biggest mistake. I should have just done that.
Just open 15 El Pequeños.
That's it. Exactly.
How do you control consistency between venues, especially with the different concepts?
It's ridiculously hard. To start, you have to be again open to working with every single person on your roster, on your team. You have to be super communicative. You have to be light on your feet a little bit when it comes down to little adaptations and stuff like that. And again, I'll revert back to at the beginning with Coldroom, we had the biggest problem that we ended up having right away was the creative cocktail button on a POS. And that at one point was like 55% of our sales were the creative cocktail button when we have a menu and it's already like, this is what it is.
Yeah.
So I had to kind of backtrack a little bit and realize that I'm working with, people that don't understand business, and that's okay. And, again, I'm still learning business as much as the next person is. And you got to kind of educate them a little bit on the business of bar, or the business of restaurant, or the business of hospitality in itself. And if you can get them to understand a little bit that, what you're actually getting out of a drink at the end of the day, or out of a plate of food or whatever it might be, like, it's not a lot. So like, help me help you in the situation, and like, let's work together. And let's not work against one another. I'm not here as a, again, I don't like to title myself as like the boss and all that stuff, but in this situation as the boss, I'm not here to be against you. I'm not here to take from you. I'm here to grow with you. And I'm here to build your brand personally. I'm here to collaborate and work with brands like Campari, like any other alcohol spirit brand. And I'm here to develop the brand of the business, whatever that may be. And all of us have to be aligned to move forward and to grow. Oh,
I
and
always say to my team that I'm a democratic leader until I don't want to be anymore. Because there's sometimes you open it to the team, you let them have their voice, you let them make decisions as a group. But there's sometimes I'm just like, no, this is the way we're going to do it. Like, foot's
oh,
down.
yeah.
Like, I'll.
You need, like, no matter what, you need, someone has to make a decision at one point. If not,
Mhm.
it gets too complicated and it's too much of a headache. And again, I've circling 40 now, or passing 40 as of yesterday. I'm very much one that, I don't have time for bullshit. So it's
Mhm.
just, okay, make a choice. Let's stick with it. Let's move on. And listen, at the end of the day, back to your question is, you're going to make mistakes no matter what. And for you to think that you're not going to come out of this, without a scar, without a mistake on your body or on your soul, you're a fool, because business, especially the business of bar and restaurants, is loaded with mistakes. So consistency as a whole is training to start off with right away, right out of the gate, setting certain standards amongst the team, amongst from the top down, from me all the way down to the first person starting with us, like the newest employee or the newest staff member. And if everyone can be consistent at that point and having a common goal, like, we're going to get there, whatever that may be, whatever that goal is, and whatever we're trying to achieve collectively.
On a personal level, like, I think as we get older, we tend to like not rest on our laurels, but we don't evolve personally. Like, you're just talking about training from the top down. Like, what do you do on a personal level to keep making sure that the stuff you're doing is the right thing, and train your personal self, your brain, to continue to evolve as well, instead of just sort of like thinking that the way you do things is the right way straight away?
Well, I started, if you're talking personal, I started with, and this is honestly the last, I'm going to say, because of COVID, it's kind of put a lot of things in perspective for me. I really enjoy what I do. Like, I like the business of hospitality. Always have. I've been doing this for, God, 22 years now. But as an owner and a boss, we're circling 10 years, and I'm still trying to get the rhythm of that. But I've done a lot of reading. I've done a lot of asking questions. At the beginning with Coldroom, my first thing was, going to my accountant and just harassing them, going to the bank and harassing them, asking every question you can think, nonstop, just being a sponge, soaking it all in. Lawyers, wasting money. Well, I say wasting, but asking those right questions.
When it comes to lawyers, it's
It's
not
a
wasting money.
50-50.
It's not wasting money. It's a little bit of like, oh, that per hour spend, just
Well,
that big swallow.
I learned one of my favorite quotes from a lawyer, after I was giving him a pretty hefty check. He looked at me and started laughing. He goes, "Education ain't free, man." And I was just like, "Fuck." I get it now. Eh? He goes, "Even if you didn't go to school, you're still gonna pay for education." I go, "Jesus."
So with the opening new venues, and we talked about Bello before, how do you adapt to market differences? Because obviously the first three places in the same, old Montreal, you know exactly what sort of clientele you're going to have, what sort of rhythm of guests are going to come through, summertime, winter time, all that sort of stuff. I know Montreal is notorious for roadworks, and I know that
Yeah.
that the strip that Pequeno was on was ripped up for months and months and months. But when you opened up Bello, what was the change for you when it came to like knowing your customer base, knowing what days were going to be busy, knowing like how did you adapt to that?
We're still figuring it out. One of my biggest, so I've had two big failures in the last 10 years. The beer store that we opened during COVID, and Parliament were two of our biggest failures. But again, see, I say the word failure, and it was a teaching lesson and teaching moment. for me. And listen, business, you're not always going to win. I'm sorry to tell you that, but that's just the reality. And listen, Coldroom in reality shouldn't have been a success. The reason I say that, it shouldn't have even opened. Because those 12 months that I was trying to get it open, every hurdle you can think of, I went through. I didn't jump over it. I went through it because there's just no choice. And same thing goes with every other venue. It's like you got to push through to make sure you get there. But then when you get to that point where it's like, okay, now I got to figure out what the hell is going on here with the area that I'm in. For me, Little Italy was a very scary thing because every single person, even today, says the exact same thing. Oh man, it's a scary area. Oh man, are you sure? It's a tough area. It's really hard to last. And yeah, that's fine. But again, you also got to remember that, circling back to Coldroom, every single person I know or I don't speak to anymore because they're just super negative or whatever it is, all told me the exact same thing. It's in 10 years, it hasn't changed. Oh my God, it's super hard. Why are you doing that? You shouldn't be doing that. Oh, it's stupid. Why are you doing that? Always negative. There's no positive behind it. So it's trial and error. And the way you got to work with that is try things. And it's all trial and error. And Bello, that's where we're kind of at right now. It's what works, what doesn't. What are we realizing? Analyze every little thing. Analyze the way clients are coming in, what time they're coming in, their interests. When is it really quiet in the area? Should we even be open? Should we be pushing it nonstop? And we're almost at that point now where we know what we need. We know what we want. We know we can't just be obviously just a cocktail bar with limited food. We need a bit more than that. So it needs to be elevated food. That's also a global thing though, personally. And that's not just an area thing now. I don't think, and this is just my opinion, cocktail bars are having a really difficult time these days, just being a cocktail bar. And for good reason. In Montreal, if we're just talking about the city, every high-end fine dining restaurant now has a pretty solid cocktail program. I say pretty solid, but you can't compare it to like a cocktail bar. But again, the average Joe and Jane doesn't know any better, to be honest. And
I'm talking to some pub owners. And they've mentioned that like their food sales have gone from like 30% to 50%. So it's like food sales have crawled up. Whether or not the top line revenue has dropped, but like people are drinking less. Like people are drinking a lot less. I've seen 36, 37% growth on non-alcoholic beverages in the last year. It's been absolutely mental. So why is Little Italy so difficult to open in?
It's a good question. I still don't have that answer.
So people just tell you it's going to be tough,
but it's the same
and then
thing.
Don't give you a reason for it.
It's the same. But I'll be honest with you, and this is in the areas like I'm giving flowers here to the Little Italy area. When we got in there, I was so accustomed to everyone ragging on us in terms of our neighbors that I'm like, oh, it's going to be a pain in the ass opening here. And the first day we opened, even the first month before, we had people coming in, bringing flowers, fruit baskets, welcome to the area. We're so excited that you're here.
Nice.
Like it's a very community driven area, which is really cool. And we're also not stepping on anyone's toes, which is also something that's important, because when I walk into an area, I try to make sure that, not that we're not competing against anybody, but it's just not the same as everybody. Like, again, Little Italy, you already know kind of what you're going to walk into, right? It's just like Chinatown, just like Little Portugal, all those areas. It's like you kind of know what you're going to get. So we kind of went obviously a different direction with it being an Italian style cocktail bar that has specifically now, has some really high level food program, which is really fun. So
Nice. So with you opening more places, I know we talked in. I know that you had a big meeting with your team just recently. How does your technology, and I know that you've been the king of spreadsheets and Excel for the last little bit. How is technology and systems like folded in so that you can give all your managers a snapshot? Well, all your staff, because I know that we talked and you said that the whole staff sat down and sort of like you were like, this is what we're doing. This is how, this is all the numbers. Here's all the figures. How do you do that so that, what do you use to put across the information you need through using new technology? Because again, I'm easy. I run Clives and I have a WhatsApp conversation with my team. They know exactly what we're doing.
Yeah.
How do you start doing it with, what have you done so special for the all four venues?
In terms of that meeting that we're talking about?
Well, you've sent me the spreadsheet, and I was really impressed with like you break down every cocktail, you break down all your sales, and so your managers get a snapshot every morning. What sort of, are you just using Excel?
Right now, yeah, because what we're trying to do, or well, the grand idea for me is coming out with an app that that has every detail that you could just look on. That's all automated, because that's the biggest problem right now is the time it takes to put these things together. And I value time quite a bit. And it's something that's important to me. And I also don't want to waste anyone's time as well. So I try to take that sort of blunt, just those hours for myself. And I do that and put that together, but it's also a waste of my time as well, where I can be doing a bit more in terms of like business development and stuff like that, or growing the whatever company that we're working on, etc. So but the main things that I look at now is I also look at other businesses, whatever they are, and see how they run things and try to incorporate it into the bar and restaurant world as well. So a lot of any app that makes sense to at least test it out, I'll do it, or I'll at least try it. So now we're trying Monday, and just for any kind of project management, because I'm realizing a lot of our management team now are taking on projects, or small projects and stuff like that. Just so if we can keep an eye on it, but also it gives us notifications and it gets automated somewhat, it's a little easier to keep track of things, and everyone can have their eye on it and their eye on the ball. And we're a tight management team anyway, like we're 6, I believe, total. And I like to make sure that they know what I'm doing, but also I know what they're doing at every step of the way, just so that we're always one accountable, but also on the same page every time. So that's one. Two is I also try to use apps or things of, if I die tomorrow, can someone take it over? And that's kind of my mentality with a lot of things. So just case in point, Canva has been such a great tool for people that don't understand Illustrator, don't understand InDesign and things like that. So it's like we build, or at least try to build, a lot of templates off of that and try to make them.
Illustrator's horrible. Canva's way better than Illustrator.
Yeah, but that's the thing, right? So and if you're working with anybody that is just illiterate completely, let's say, argument's sake, I'm not there, one of the managers aren't there, and we need somebody to print a menu. If it's on Canva ready to go, all they have to do is change something to print it. Why not? Like it's that easy. So it's just finding the right tools that can work for everybody, but also being accountable, and at the same time knowing what everyone's doing at all times is kind of the most important thing. And if you can stay and be very, very rigid on those details amongst your team, especially the core team, you can actually get pretty far with things.
When it comes to, let's chat money. When it comes to financial management, what sort of considerations do you take into budgets and top line revenue, bottom line revenue when it comes to multi units. Because when you start getting into those 2, 3, 4, 5 units, you can have one unit. It's like a deck, especially in hospitality, it's like a deck of cards, like a castle of cards. That one unit, one venue can, if it's not doing well, can bring down the whole entire.
Oh yeah, I've been through that.
So how do you manage that, and how do you balance costs while still like trying to figure out the next projects? I know you don't like to sit still very often, and I know that you are always looking for new venues and stuff. So how do you balance venues profitability and the cost of those venues? Because we can say every venue is profitable, but is it making as much? That's not true. But
that's not true. That's
so
not true.
how do you do that and then build more growth?
That's a funny one, because the original one was really my original thought process behind it is, it's just nonstop open, reinvest. Now, after the 2 projects that didn't go the way we wanted them to, going back to what I learned from those things, Parliament specifically, and I won't get too deep into details because that'll be a never-ending story. But one of the things that I learned on that was that when it comes to when you get into a failing business, it's not even just a failing business, but when you get to any business, you got to try to keep your heart out of it, because the passion part of it, especially if it's like I'll use Coldroom as the perfect example. Coldroom is, I put my heart and soul into that space, and I left everything on the table for that space. And if it came down to having to keep it open or closing it because of it's not profiting or whatever it is, I'm at a point now in my life where I actually understand what that means. And it's not even in my life, but in business, that it's like, we got to either change the concept, pull the plug, or move on. Which one is it? And I'm comfortable with those things now. And it's like, you got to really leave emotion at the door. That's like number one baseline. If you don't leave emotion at the door, you can get in a lot of trouble financially. You can get a lot of trouble mentally, etc. So that's one. After that, then you get into the finance stuff. What's the lowest you want to get to in terms of cash flow? Like if you're at nothing, then and you're living paycheck to paycheck for the business, it's not a fun place to be. Like it's very stressful. Not a lot of people can deal with that stress. Physically, I've fallen apart a few times, and you know this because you and I have spoken quite a bit. And when you're in that situation where you're like, I don't know if I can pay my employees tomorrow, it's really not a fun feeling. It's very difficult to deal with. So you need to know what your stress level is and what you can deal with, because those conversations to tell somebody you can't pay them, they're not fun. And if you need to understand something also behind that in terms of business, is that you're probably going to end up going through that unless you're some magical unicorn that nothing ever goes wrong with you, which I've never seen that happen before. It'll happen. And, that's business at the end of the day. And you can't look at it as just, it's a bar or a restaurant. It's business, period. End of story. There's all different facets of business in the world. And a bar and or a restaurant is not different from an online company and stuff like that, except for maybe the difference of employees. But you just need to know some thresholds that you can deal with, because it's a lot. And, same thing goes with like a loan. If you go to the bank and get a loan, what's your threshold? Like, are you able to deal with a loan and like getting a late payment slip and having to call somebody and deal with that? Like, I've went through the bankruptcy process, and I didn't know what that entails when you go bankrupt. and
Oh, it
a lot of
sucks.
oh
It
God,
sucks.
have you? One of the things that I learned from it is sitting down and having to wait with your trustee, the person who is taking control of the business now before it goes bankrupt or during the bankruptcy process. And you have to sit there with the trustee while every single person your business owes money to comes in to speak to you about it. The humiliation you go through while, especially waiting for somebody to show up, just going, oh my God,
Yeah.
God. It is the worst feeling ever, because I'm not somebody who doesn't want to pay people. It's like, if I'm in that situation, it's because I'm really in that situation.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I will give my last dollar to pay. And again, you speak to any accountant, you speak to any lawyer, they're going to tell you you're an idiot for saying something like that, but that's who I am as a person.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to be known as the guy who doesn't pay.
Yeah.
Like, that's because then it's like you're losing your word, and for me, your word and your name is everything. And if you lose that, it's
if you want to see anyone leave a motion at the door, sit down with the trustee.
Oh my God, it's insane. It's insane. They got no feelings.
Yeah, no feelings whatsoever.
No feelings.
They're there to gut you like a fish and just take you apart.
That's it.
How do you do? I know that Rob and I have hung out and had great times here in Victoria. How do you build your leadership and your culture across your group, knowing that like what you want, your mission statement, your mantras, your sort of ideologies can filter through your management team and then into your staff, and not sort of get screwed up with telephone on the way through, where it's like someone takes 20% of what you do and then gets cut down to 5. Then by the time it gets to the dishwasher at one venue, it's down to like 0.05% of your ideologies. How do you keep those ideologies thing? Because I think the hard thing in hospitality is that we just assume, and again, you were saying about business and how there's businesses in all facets in every industry that can behave just like a bar and restaurant. How do you do that with that sort of ideology? Because a lot of times restaurant owners don't put their ideologies down on paper. It's more of a intangible expectation. How do you make sure that those ideologies flow through your whole group?
Well, to start with, it's hiring the right people, finding the right team. That's like number one. And that took years to deal with and to figure out. I always went, when it comes to people, I always went based on my gut, like gut feeling. I also wanted people who had kind of the same understanding that I did, which is they want to learn, they're curious, they want to see, they want to grow within the industry. That was something that was super important to me. And they just want to learn, constantly learning. The second thing is that I don't try to put them in a box too much where they can't be themselves. Because again, effort is a reflection of leadership, and that's something that's super important. And if your team is negative and down and upset and stuff like that, there's a problem, the step above, and whatever that problem may be, depending on what your company structure is. If that's the management team above that, then okay, what's wrong with the management team? Why are they not in a good place? And then above the management team, the upper management team, and then above that, ownership and stuff like that. So if all the way at the top, if you're not happy, and then that starts trickling down, it doesn't stop. Now, when you're voicing your opinion on something, you also have to give them the power to kind of make a decision as well, and let them lead whatever that may be. So, we put certain goals in every month or every quarter. Now we've kind of stretched it out a little bit more to every quarter, instead of being every month, because I find that just a little too tight. So we go per quarter now, and we have small goals. Bring in 2 events, come up with let's say we want to bring in this month $10,000 in events. How are we going to reach that goal? Is it private events? Is it going business to business, saying come do an event with us, whatever it may be? Or is it just come up with a random event, or, you know, a la supper club that you have at Clive's kind of thing? So it's like, bring in extra money. How do we do that? How do we achieve that? And it's just getting them to think outside the box a little bit, instead of just putting them in a box. And I'm one to believe in, it's actually a friend of mine that he took a business seminar, and he came back with the word entrepreneur, which is a friend of mine, Jay Max from 132. And I started looking it up because I found it such an interesting word. And then I started really doing my homework on the difference between an entrepreneur and an entrepreneur. And that's kind of the people that I'm looking for now, are entrepreneurs, whether they're bartenders or managers. It's people that care about the business, people that want to grow within the business, people that don't want to have that risk that an entrepreneur takes, and that stress that an entrepreneur takes, like we were just talking about before. But have all the fun stuff that comes with entrepreneurship, which is the creative side, the building, the caring about a space, the security of a business, obviously, if it's doing well. All those details are super important to me. So it's looking for somebody who just cares about the business. And if you can find that, then you can grow with them. And if you can grow with them, you know, you can get them on your side of what you're trying to do. I'm not looking just for a manager. You know, a manager for me is a robot, especially the world we live in now. There's no, like, managers these days are very, what's the word I'm looking for here?
Company people? And not
they're
necessarily
robots. They're like,
like they want to stay in that, like, the box.
Yeah.
Like, they're not thinking outside the box. They're just like, I come to work, I manage people, I make sure the place runs okay.
They do the four things. You know, it's managing people, but again, depending on if they're hiring or firing, which most of the time they're not, it's somebody else that does that. So you have a manager, you have you have them doing that, you have them taking inventory. So now it's a glorified inventory taker, where you could be paying somebody like a lot less than that base salary. Like, I'm not being mean. It's just like, if we're talking business, that's business.
Yeah.
Like, you're trying, I'm not saying you're trying to cut costs, but you're trying to look at the jobs,
maximize the dollars you're putting out.
100%. But also, it's like, if it's a job that I'd rather, if I'm paying you, argument's sake, $35 an hour as a manager, if you're breaking it down hourly, I'd rather be investing that $35 into something more than just inventory. Like, that's just a waste of time. Yeah. So
that's always, with labor, it's always a kind of a weird thing in our industry, where for every dollar of advertising or marketing you spend, you want X amount of ROI. For every dollar you spend on food, you want this much back. And so with labor, I find sometimes it doesn't translate that. For every dollar of labor you spend, you want to get $3 to $4, $5, $6 back on that dollar.
100%.
Higher per head spend, creative ideas, those sort of things you're talking about.
Well, it's funny because another fun person that I love the quote he gave me, Richard Ryan from Drinksology. We had a great conversation just about annual meetings or annual follow-ups with staff, and the joke was annual follow-ups are always ends up into annual raises, because that's all people are kind of looking for.
Yeah,
which I understand, because again, it falls into the same problem of just people don't understand an independent business as much as they do a corporate job. You know, and my goal behind that is that if you're working with us because you want to learn the business side of hospitality. And one of the things that I appreciate with that is that trying to show people that, okay, you want to raise, I understand that, but these are the numbers, and it's an open book. And like, I'm very open with our numbers. I don't mind showing what they are, Because at the end of the day, even if the business is, argument's sake, profiting 20%, that's the business's money. That's not my money. It's not. I don't pocket that. It's the business that has that money, and it's the business's choice of what to do with that. Yes, I'm the one who makes the final decision, but I do that with the team. If we need something new to buy in terms of equipment or whatever that may be, that's what we do, and we grow from there. But if somebody comes and asks me for a raise, whatever that may be, it's okay. How are you going to bring in money,
much more money,
to justify that pay bump?
Yeah,
because it's like the business needs to make more money to pay you. Like that's how it works, and that's why it's important to let people know how business runs, which is really sad because it's something that should be taught in school, and just like the economics of things, but it's so over everyone's head, which is super sad because it's also falls into their personal life as well, where it's like most people I know don't know how to budget either, which is even crazier.
So with you opening 2 venues in 1 year, which is still insane, by the way, what's your advice for someone who has their own place right now and is like, you know what, I want to make them jump and do a second venue, whether it be the same concept, cookie cutter style, like the gazillion death and companies there are now. What's your advice for those people who want to make that leap from single unit to multi-venue sort of companies?
Figure out how much time you take in a week personally. If you're a sole owner, if you're have a partnership, whatever it may be, how many hours are you guys actually putting in during your week for that one business right away? That's number one. Then multiply it by 2 if you're not systemized. Now, if you're systemized, how can you cut your hours down for any job that you have to do, whatever it might be? So again, option 1 behind that, and I'll just use that as an example. When we opened Coldroom, the biggest problem that we had was tips. Tips would take forever because we had a lot of cash coming in. So in Quebec, how it works with tips is that tips are they have to be declared fully.
Okay.
Cash you can declare. I can't remember what it is. I think it's like 8 or 10% of it, but based off of like that's where it gets complicated. So we have to declare basically 100% of it. So most of the time, again, bartenders and waiters, I know quite a bit of them. I think on our team, we're actually like in a good place right now where we have 47 employees that everyone's doing their taxes, thank God. But in the past, we had people that didn't do their taxes for years. And we just went, okay, instead of that, we'll facilitate doing tips. The problem with doing tips now is that it takes a long time because if it's a point system, you gotta break everything down, and it's a lot of manpower and a lot of hours. So I ended up building a spreadsheet, and that's kind of where spreadsheets started for me. I ended up building a spreadsheet that takes care, that's basically a bi-weekly report. So it's like a 3-in-1. It handles basically all the hours and payroll. It handles all the tips and the tip breakdown. And it also handles just our basically weekly report of what we did in sales and percentages and stuff like that, and labor costs, all that jazz. And it takes me personally per day maximum 10 minutes to handle. So, and that's like on a maximum. Obviously, if it's a new program for somebody or a new sort of system for somebody, it takes them a little longer. But now we can break it down in like 45 minutes for 7 days.
Wow.
Which is perfect. So it's like I stretch it out to like almost 2 hours in case. So it's like, okay, it takes 2 hours to do that. So that's how we sort of box and compartmentalize everything, where it's like, okay, you got 2 hours for tips and accounting, and basically payroll at that point. You have 2 hours for this, 2 hours for this, and that's weekly. Perfect. Done. So that specifically, has saved so much now in terms of money being lost, money being moved, because there's a lot of cash handling at that point, but everything gets sort of compartmentalized in that. And then you just compare it to the POS and life's beautiful. So
I think that's probably the best piece of advice you're given. Like if you're at your one venue 60 hours a week and you're like, I'm going to open a second venue, you don't have time.
No, at all. Like systemize.
And your bandwidth is already stretched, and then you're like, I'm going to do a second venue to make more money or try a new concept stuff. But if you're spending 60 hours a week and you have one venue, you're kind of screwed if you do 2 or 3.
Exactly.
Yeah. So we're down to the 5 questions at the end of every podcast that I do. What is the one lesson or experience that has shaped your perspective the most, and how do you carry that forward in your life?
One lesson? Say that one more time. Sorry.
What is the one lesson or experience that has shaped your perspective the most, and how do you carry that forward in your life?
Man, that's a tough one. One lesson, because there's so many, so many. I would say, oh my God, I don't want to use COVID as that example, but COVID put a full brakes on work and life. And I think that was kind of my life lesson for me, where there's more to life than just work. So you know what? And there's always tomorrow. So don't stress over it. If, let's say, you have a 9-to-5 job and you're being paid for 9 to 5 and you have to work till 8 p.m. Go home, relax, think about it tomorrow, because there's still tomorrow. And if you're just going to stress over work for nothing, like, that's not a life. Find your balance. I don't like to use the words work-life balance, but in reality, it's balance, especially if you enjoy work like I do. It's find your balance between what you like doing, i.e. work, your family, and your extracurricular activities, whatever they may be. Going to the gym, working out, something that's just going to get you a bit more relaxed mentally and feeling good as well at the same time.
Looking back on your journey, what is something you wish you had understood earlier in life?
Don't listen to anybody, which I still don't.
I
know. Don't listen to the negative, why? Because one is either they're super jealous, 2 is envious, 3, they don't give a shit about you anyway. So who gives a shit? So move on with the negatives, and that's it. Like, just block it out.
How do you define success, and has your definition of it changed over time?
Definitely did. Not knocking on any awards or anything like that, but that right there. As soon as I achieved that, I, realized it's like, what the fuck? Okay, now what? And that's, an award is not defining who you are at all. Award, excuse me, but award, I don't want to say is meaningless, but it's nice to be recognized, and it feels nice. But if that's the only reason you're doing this, then believe me when I say this, it's a waste. So it's really a waste of your life. You should be, focused on personal growth, experiences. You should be focused on seeing the world, making friends abroad, experiencing new things. That's, to me, is success. And being around just positivity, that to me is success. Positive people that see life the way you do, not moaning and bickering over stupidities. That's success for me, is just being in a good place. And that's it. And just enjoying life for what it is.
What do you hope your legacy will be?
I think to me, the most important thing is just for my kids, and that's it. Everything else, I don't want to say I could give a shit, but I could give a shit. I think what's the most important is my kids see that you can do anything in life and not be scared of anything. That's the most important thing for me, is if you want to go out and do something, just go and do it. Life's way too short not to enjoy it, not to do stuff that you like, not to experience things again. And if you're scared, you're not going to go far in life, and you're going to miss the boat. And believe me, it's a boat you don't want to miss.
Well, man, thank you so much for your time. I know you're busy, and I know that even this episode, and I would say that we're pretty close to being best friends. And even that, you were just like, I can't do it. I'm like, come on, dude, I need this. You need to do this with me. He's like, I know I'm too busy. Something blew up, or something was leaking, or something happened this week that you tied up. So I appreciate you sitting down with me for the last hour, man. I think
always.
I don't think there's a lot of independent multi-venue people in the country that I sort of look up to that are doing it well, solopreneur, as well as not just doing the same venue over and over and over again. Actually, like, every concept's completely unique and different from the last one.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Appreciate that.
So I'm really glad that you're my second guest for the Post Shift Podcast 2.0.
By the way, before you cut off, to put me after Shawn Finter,
it's perfect.
That's tough. That's perfect. A tough follow. That's a tough follow.
That was a really good episode as well. But I'm gonna chat to you real soon, okay, buddy?
Yeah, buddy. Love you.
I love you, man.
Thank you.